What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Road to Liberty podcast. Tonight we have another edition of our Better Know a Caucus series. If you've been keeping track, we've talked to the Mises Caucus, the Republican Liberty Caucus. We talked to the Secular Caucus last week. And today we have Andy Craig, the political director for the Libertarian Pragmatist Caucus. What's up, Andy? How you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Now, when we decided to do this Better Know a Caucus series, I knew that the pragmatists were one of the ones that I absolutely had to get on because, well, they're all over the place. You go to a convention and the pragmatists, they're always there. They're always doing their thing. And they get a lot done within the Libertarian Party. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of the Pragmatist Caucus?
Well, sure. We're pretty new. We started after 2016, after the election, leading up to the 2018 convention in New Orleans, which was kind of our first national convention. And basically, we're dedicated to promoting kind of nuts and bolts electioneering to actually go out and win elections as libertarians. And we're focused on kind of improving the operations of the National Party staff, promoting best practices for state party organization, fundraising, door knocking, all that sort of stuff. And so that's kind of what we keep an eye on, and that's the brand we work to promote, and kind of let that do the talking. We put out our recommendations, and hopefully people learn to kind of trust and see where we're at on these things. And so we go into national conventions and look at what's going on, and make recommendations as the case may be.
All right. Well, was there a precursor to the Pragmatic Caucus? Because I was under the impression that pragmatists have been around for a while.
Sure. Yeah. It's definitely been a thing in the party. It's not been it's not been formally organized at all. But there's definitely a strain. There's people who've been pushing this kind of mindset in the party. A lot of times it's focused on a particular either presidential candidate or chair candidate, and that's how these things kind of tend to come and go. And we thought it would be useful to have something, particularly coming after the Johnson campaign, which not all, but a lot of us were involved with. We wanted something that wasn't so tied to, the immediate whoever's running. That's not tied to Gary Johnson and his campaign or Nick Starlark and his campaign. We wanted something a little bit more persistent, and so that's part of why we decided to organize it as in a formal way like that.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us about the mission of the Pragmatist Caucus?
Well, our mission is basically to find and adopt best practices for the Libertarian Party as a professional trying to win elections organization. A lot of that involves, basically just taking campaign management 101, skills that are available and out there that the Republicans and Democrats use and win with, and applying that technology and, those methods to trying to get elected as libertarians. And so that's a lot of what we're focused on. And also we keep a close eye on what's going on with the National Party and its staff. And so, when we like what we're seeing, we encourage more of that. We encourage LNC members to back something that's working, and, hey, maybe something else isn't working as well. Let's rethink that. So that's a lot of what we kind of day-to-day focus on.
Absolutely. So as anybody who's involved with libertarian politics knows, there's a lot of different factions within libertarianism and within the Libertarian Party, a lot of different groups vying for support. Why should libertarians support the Pragmatic Caucus as opposed to one of these other caucuses?
Well, it's not mutually exclusive. We have radicals that are involved. We have some people who are involved in Mises or some of the others even. We deliberately made the choice that we're not ideological. that, I have my opinions on platform things, and other people have, we don't put out recommendations on how the platform should change or anything like that. Um, we so that's one of the things I would tell people is it's not mutually exclusive. If you want to be involved in any other effort to, push other goals and agendas in the party, that's perfectly fine with us. And that, this is just for everybody to focus on kind of this specific, aspect of the party's mission and organization.
Absolutely. Now, it is a question that most libertarians get, but why should libertarians support the Libertarian Party
Mm.
instead of, say, going to the Republican or Democratic parties? What would be the pragmatist answer to that?
Well, I think we've seen that just from a purely pragmatic perspective, you don't get very far working within the GOP. You can get some people, you can get some flukes. It happens. I know some good lowercase l libertarians who have managed to win mostly local offices in the other parties, but it's important for libertarianism as an ideology, as something that stands apart from right wing conservatives or left wing Democrats. Though, as we all know, this is mostly a conversation that happens with should we work in the GOP or not. And when you commit to that, you get dragged in that direction. The incentives inevitably pull libertarians who try to work within one of the major parties in a less libertarian direction. Um, and another thing I would say is that the two party system is itself a large part of the problem. If you see some of the things Justin Amash has been saying on this topic recently, he had this phrase partisan death spiral, and it's very true. And there's something about the nature of a binary two party system that divides people and leads to this very low trust kind of environment in our society, and liberty can't thrive in that sort of, liberty can't thrive if everybody hates everybody and is convinced that, the country's split down the middle into these two irreconcilable camps. So for the Libertarian Party, if we could get in and have just a few seats at the table in some of these state legislatures in Congress, I think we could actually, accomplish quite a lot. And I would also say, of course, there are libertarians who do win. We have Jeff Hewitt on the board of supervisors in Riverside County, California. That's two Republicans, two Democrats, and Jeff Hewitt, libertarian, overseeing a budget with billions of dollars and millions of people who live there in that county. So libertarians can win, and it's important for libertarians to have a political manifestation outside of we're just the Republicans who mean it and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. I like to call this the Rand Paul syndrome, where you just kind of get sucked more and more into the GOP machinery to where eventually you get to the point where you're almost indistinguishable from
Right.
a lot of the standard Republicans.
I mean, in 2010 Rand is the perfect example. In 2010 when he was elected, I was coming off the 2008 Ron Paul campaign, which I loved, and that's how I kind of got into a lot of this stuff. Um, and I thought this is great. Hey, we're going to have might disagree with him on some stuff, but he's pretty much aligned with us. And now he's a full blown, Trump. He really has. He's not the good face we should have for libertarianism as an alternative to the usual right wing conservatives and the left.
Exactly. I mean, libertarians do indeed win, not on the high levels, but on local levels. One of this podcast's founders, Ben Backus, has been a sitting libertarian on the Gehring City Council for a while now. And he does a podcast every Thursday night on local politics, how to get involved and be successful on that level. So libertarians can and do win, maybe not on the big ticket races like Congress and Senate, but we can win, and we do win when it comes to local elections.
Yeah.
So what kind of success can the Pragmatic Caucus claim so far?
Well, we did pretty well at the national convention in New Orleans. We were discussing how to do this. So what we ended up doing organizationally was we had our first kind of meeting where anybody could come, all our members. And we had votes on endorsing candidates for the national committee seats. Our chair candidate won pretty overwhelmingly, so that was certainly something we were pleased with. Tim Hagan, we backed for treasurer. He won in a landslide, and 4 of our 5 candidates endorsed for the 5 at-large seats won. One way I think about it, and this is kind of a rough guesstimate, but judging from the different races and when different groups endorse different people, and you can kind of suss this out. Um, we think we were about 40% of the body at the national convention in New Orleans, and so that's not by itself enough for a win, and we didn't win everything. Um, but when we had an alliance, working at similar purpose with other groups, or enough people are just kind of in the middle, we were pleased with the results.
Now, do you guys work with state and local parties to try to get pragmatist friendly delegates to conventions?
We encourage people. One thing we did decide to do different is that's the traditional way this is done. Is you try to place delegates. It's how presidential campaigns do it. And we deliberately wanted a kind of lighter touch strategy. For one thing, when you come into a state party trying to take it over or place your people, that can backfire. I've seen that happen a lot. And so we encourage our people who want to come to be there, and we welcome everybody who wants to come participate in our process to be part of it. But actually, no, that's we're not. We're not coordinating. I mean, I worked on the Gary Johnson campaign, and this is one of the things we and all the other candidates did. But we are not pushing, slates of our people to be delegates, or to block anybody else from being a delegate. I think that's kind of unproductive, and that you really this is LP stuff, you win through persuasion. The people who are going to be there as delegates, the core of the party's membership, are going to be there, and they're well over half of the voting delegates at any convention. So you can move the needle a little bit, trying to stuff it with your people and that sort of thing. But really, you just have to know the party's core membership and be able to talk to and persuade them. That's how conventions are won.
Yeah, I don't know about your personal experience, but my personal experience here in Nebraska, LP members tend to be very loyal to their state. Tend to be a very close knit group. I know if there were a bunch of people who showed up at Nebraska's next state convention that we'd never seen before, people would be kind of suspicious.
Right.
And I mean, for better or worse, there's a lot of, I don't want to say distrust, but dissatisfaction, I guess you can say, with a lot of state members for the national party. So I do think a lighter touch would be the better approach, because
Yeah.
otherwise, you like you said, you can cause a backfire against you.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about your caucus's relationship with other caucuses in the party?
We don't have any formal relationship with any others. And we don't define ourselves in an opposition to any of the others. Um, we try to keep it friendly, and we have good relationships with certainly a lot of the radicals. I mean, that's one of the it was one of the positive developments we saw in New Orleans, is there was a bit of a bridging of that divide. Um, and we certainly like to play a part in that, keeping everybody kind of on good terms. So there'll be times when we disagree on either a choice of candidate, or whether the party should do this or that organizationally or whatever, and if so, we disagree. But that's not, we definitely don't try to message ourselves as rally against around us to defeat whoever. So that's not what we're about.
Okay. Well, one of the common complaints I hear about pragmatists in the party is that you sacrifice principles for electability.
Mm.
Do you think that's a fair complaint? And if not, why not?
Well, there's 2 things I'd say about that. First is, I was on the platform committee and the bylaws committee. I was pushing to make the platform more radical on abortion, on immigration, but several of the issues that came up. My inclination was I don't want to water down the platform. I I really do feel strongly that's why we're involved in the party. Nobody's involved in the party that doesn't believe a libertarian world would be a much better world. Um, so, when it comes to weighing the pros and cons of different candidates, it matters that we have somebody that actually agrees with our position. And there have been libertarian candidates that I wouldn't back because I didn't think they well represented what we stand for. But the caucus, as such, we kind of trust the judgment of the party at large on, where and when to draw that line. We're not pushing idea. We're not pushing to water down the platform. We're not moderate. We're not trying to make the party more moderate or anything like that. We are quite strictly. We're not. We don't get involved in anarchist versus minarchist or any of that. If other people have their opinion and want to slug it out over that, that's up to them. But yeah, no, we're absolutely not in it to try to water down the party. And in our kind of personal non-caucus capacities, when we see that thing going on, several of our leadership team have been involved in pushing back if we see a candidate or something like that we feel somebody's wandering off the reservation of the party's platform positions and all that.
I mean, if that's true, what you say about not getting involved in the minarchist versus anarchist debate, you would be the only libertarians I've ever met that don't take a stance on that.
We have, I know we have both on our board, and I could not tell you which is which.
That's good. See, for me, I like seeing anarchists and minarchists and classical liberals and all these people get along. I hate it when you get into this purity spiral when nobody is libertarian enough for anybody else.
Right.
And we all want to go into our separate corners because you just can't get along with anybody because they're just not pure enough.
And I'll say one thing about that is a lot of times it seems like purity can get pretty subjectively in the eye of the beholder. Um, we do want candidates who are, if there's anything it's not anybody, we don't oppose to anybody being as radical as they want to be, um, or as hardline, full blown Rothbardian anarchist if they want. Um, but too often that gets conflated with the kind of paper candidate model of, I'm super duper principled. I can recite the platform, standing on my head. So I'm going to go throw my name on the ballot, and then that's the end of it. And then, oh, gee, I only got 0.5%. Well, that's not because you were too radical. It's because you didn't run a campaign.
Yeah, it's because you weren't serious about it.
Right.
You think that elections are won on principle alone, and they're not. They're won by door knocking. They're won. You got to actually go out there and work to get elected. Yeah, a lot of libertarians apparently think that they don't have to work at it so long as they're principled enough. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your role in the caucus as political director? What does that job entail?
um, Basically, I keep an eye on what's going on in the party, kind of keeping my finger on the pulse of things. And I help guide our messaging, as I talked about our kind of soft touch brand centered strategy. And so I help formulate that, and I look at when we're doing it endorsements. I take the lead on that. We have a process it goes through, but I take the lead on looking at different candidates and kind of preparing a brief. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And I'm, if we hear of something going on in some state party that's of interest to us, I'll reach out to people there in the state party and say, hey, what's up? Can we help, or is there anything that's a problem here? And so that's more or less what I do, which is not that different from a lot of other libertarians do.
So, do you guys make, I guess, endorsements of candidates outside of national? So, like, say there's a primary race for Senate in some state. Do
Right.
you guys do you guys make recommendations or do you stay out of those?
We haven't yet. There hasn't been. We wouldn't necessarily rule it out, but we have not seen such a race yet where we felt we felt that strongly about it, and it's not our focus. We do plan to have the internal discussion and a vote among caucus members at the National Convention about a presidential candidate. And, you know, if we saw something, it would basically have to be something like really. The example I might bring up was when Augustus Invictus ran for the Florida Senate primary, and I feel terrible that I'm blanking on his name, but another libertarian jumped in to Paul Stanton. Jumped in to basically be the, you know, we can't have the goat killing Nazi on our ticket. So
Yeah,
that
we can agree on that.
right. So that sort of thing, we might, you know, throw our support, you know, to it. But for the most part, that's something that it really takes the local knowledge. It takes the people who are active in the local party and know the people. I mean, it's really hard to look at that sort of thing, you know, from the other side of the country and know who all is involved and what all, you know, to really know the candidates like people in their own states do. And there's not a whole lot of contested libertarian, but it's not a ton of contested libertarian nominations for lower office.
Right. Is there a formal membership list? Like, if someone wants to be a member of the Pragmatist Caucus, what would they have to do for that to happen?
Well, we don't have. We kind of decided basically anybody who wants to be involved can be involved. We're not going to be that formal about it. When we do gather at the national convention for our mini caucus convention, um, voting rights in that is restricted to people who've given $25 just to help us cover the costs of the room and materials and such. So we do have that. If you're going to be a national convention delegate, you want to participate in our meeting as a voting member, we ask that just like the national party does. But as beyond that, no, we don't. If you want to join and call yourself a member, that's fine. But we're not we're not Madame Defarge knitting our lists.
All right. Well, we're up against a half hour. I like to keep these episodes short. So if someone wants more information on the Pragmatist Caucus, just wants to learn a little bit more about you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, you can definitely sign up and submit your information at lpcaucus.org, and that will get you on our list to get the heads up about what we're up to. There's a Facebook discussion group. Likewise, it's LP Caucus discussion group, and you can join there, and that's where most of the discussion happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and contributing to this Better Know a Caucus series. Remember, everybody, next week we're going to have the Radical Caucus on to kind of wrap up this series. And the website for us is roads2liberty.com, roads2liberty.com. Remember, we're on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube. And we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Minds, Instagram. All right. Thank you, Andy, again for coming on. This has been an awesome discussion. I knew I wanted the pragmatists on here. We finally got you on. So thank you again for coming.
Excellent. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too, man. Everybody out there, you have a good night. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have a good one.